What are some subtle signs of someone that's highly intelligent? Thinking things through is one thing, but intelligent people also know the limits of their own knowledge. They won't easily go anti-vax or deny climate change, while others do simply because it matches their worldview and they consider their own conclusions based on some random articles to be superior to the views of mainstream science. Absolutely this, but also have enough insight to not dumb it down so they are condescending. It's tricky sometimes trying to enclosing something you are really passionate about. I'm a nurse and a teacher and I love to talk about how amazingly resilient our bodies are, explaining how the heart beats. All that stuff. Sometimes I get more excited than my students. I reckon if you give a shit about what you're talking about it helps, because you genuinely want others to get it too. This is important, but it's a very specific kind of intelligence that is well suited to lead/management/coaching roles. I do know a lot of people that are definitely very intelligent but find it hard to express something they are interested in or working on in language that would be relatable to people outside their specific field. I would say smart people can entertain thoughts without emotions getting in the way. A person can be smart but not applying it right because their lens to view it with has become tinged by an emotion that usually comes with some illogical root. There's another thought on the matter. What people focus on. It was small minds talk about people, medium minds tales about events, and large minds talk about ideas. That's not just the idea of discussing ideas, but the ability to synthesize new information from them. Mostly, I would say synthesis of new thought is the best indicator of intelligence. I can meet a lot of good memories, a lot of detail-oriented minds, but if it can only store, it's not a useful brain. A smart brain can reach conclusions and extrapolate from input to a new understanding. I think the emotion one is a bit of a problem though. Many people will say they are logical and smart BC they don't view something emotionally when in truth, unless it's something you have no attachment to, a problem you've never experienced and have no history with, in which case why are you invested? There will be some emotion involved 90% of the time. It's acknowledgement of that emotional response and not letting it get in the way of judgment that makes the distinction, not the assumption that you feel nothing about anything in the first place. The ability to appreciate things and people for what and who they are, not expecting every television show or film they watch to be groundbreaking, not expecting every meal to be multiple Michelin stars, and not expecting everyone to be on the same wavelength as they are. Being glad that we have so many perspectives, insights, and experiences that are all enjoyable in their own ways, and do not need to be directly compared one another. It's not really a sign of intelligence to think the entire body of research of IQ correlations is meaningless. For any given individual, their IQ can prove or disprove whether they follow a trend or break from it, but the reality is IQ, and particularly the G factor, very strongly correlate with ability to perform on measures traditionally associated with intelligence and life success factors traditionally associated with intelligence. For any actual objective measurement of intelligence anyone has come up with, EQ correlates with it. Someone intelligent would understand both the value and limitations of the measurement, not dismiss the entire body of evidence based on some hip trend. To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. The humor is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of theoretical physics most of the jokes will go over a typical viewer's head. There's also Rick's nihilistic outlook, which is deftly woven into his characterization. His personal philosophy draws heavily from Narodnaya literature. For instance, the fans understand this stuff. They have the intellectual capacity to truly appreciate the depths of these jokes, to realize that they're not just funny, they say something deep about life. As a consequence, people who dislike Rick and Morty truly are idiots. Of course they wouldn't appreciate, for instance, the humor in Rick's existential catchphrase wubba-lubba-dub-dub, which itself is a cryptic reference to Turgenev's Russian epic Fathers and Sons. I'm smirking right now just imagining one of those adulterated simpletons scratching their heads in confusion as Dan Harmon's genius wit unfolds itself on their television screens. What fools! How I pity them. And yes, by the way, I do have a Rick and Morty tattoo. And no, you cannot see it. It's for the ladies' eyes only, and even then they have to demonstrate that they're within 5 IQ points of my own, preferably lower, beforehand. Nothing personnel, kid. They can admit to themselves and others that they know everything. Someone truly intelligent knows they can't possibly be an expert in every field. As such, they're willing to listen to experts in fields other than their own, and they're willing to listen to experts in their own field to broaden their own understanding. They learn both sides of an argument before making a decision. Basically, they want all the facts to speak for themselves before jumping to an emotional, knee-jerk conclusion. They know how to spot bias in stories and think critically about sources. They're willing to change their mind about something if they're proven wrong, mistaken, and will admit they were wrong. Curiosity. Intelligent people ask a lot of questions and are interested in a lot of things. I'm not sure if this is subtle or not, but a willingness to say I don't know. The very common trait where someone will hear about something and make up their mind within a few seconds and then pretend to be an expert and never accept any information that would suggest they're wrong, is a trait of people who aren't especially smart. If you ask someone what they think about so-and-so an issue and they're able to say something like I don't know, I haven't really thought about it, or I have a lot of questions, or I don't know enough yet, that's a sign of intelligence. Obviously, it's still possible for an intelligent person to have learned enough and formed an opinion, so I'm not saying a person is automatically stupid if they answer, yes I have an opinion on that matter, or yes I've reached a conclusion. This kind of goes against the grain of many of these responses, but I think intellectual stubbornness is a subtle sign of intelligence. Very intelligent people are used to being right because they often are right. They're also often able to convince others they are right, which reinforces their stubbornness. This leads to a belief that others are wrong on matters upon which reasonable minds can disagree. Many world-renowned experts on a given subject find it difficult to change their minds because they are not used to being wrong. Many famous scientists have been like this, even though one of the hallmarks of science is the ability to change based on new information. One of the co-discoverers of DNA has said that HIV doesn't cause AIDS and argued that certain races are genetically inferior to others. Not many other intelligent people would agree with that. As has been said by others here, many intelligent people are able to quickly incorporate new information and change their views. But intelligence also often leads the intelligent to the conclusion that others can't possibly be right because the intelligent are used to them being wrong. Inability or unwillingness to change one's mind is often seen as a mark of low intelligence. Humility, agreeableness, empathy, and other traits account for the ability to change one's mind. Unfortunately, being stubborn in one's beliefs is often a sign of high intelligence. They might act a bit differently. People like Einstein and Newton had high-functioning autism, which can affect the way you socialize. This could also be a part of low-functioning autism, but you can figure out which one it is by getting to know the person better. Almost all the famous scientists and mathematicians throughout history had high-functioning autism, Asperger's, and that could be something to look out for. Reasonable suspicion about metrics regarding intelligence. IQ tests and standardized tests like that can give you a ballpark comparison, but there's a lot of bias in those tests, between how they're written, how they're administered, even the subjects that they cover. Seriously, check out how standardized testing is adjusted. So when girls show a superior performance, balancing is required. When boys show the superior performance, no adjustment is necessary. And that's not even to mention the skew among race and class, which is far worse. Source: this is an article from 1996, and there's only one paragraph in there about race, where it's briefly mentioned, and doesn't really speculate on where those differences come from. Give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 are free. But the data mentioned is from College Board themselves, and another testing agency. The line between someone who is manipulative and someone who is intelligent is thin, because someone who doesn't know what they are talking about and can make it seem like they know what they are talking about may seem smarter than someone who knows what they are talking about but cannot explain it as efficiently as the manipulative person. The ability to predict likely outcomes of a scenario before taking action. Some people are so dumb they don't even understand punching someone in public will get them put in gaol. That would be thinking 0 steps ahead. Some people have an incredible knack for strategy. This isn't just war or games. It's the ability to gauge the likely reactions of a person and plan according to that, not just for one step, but several steps ahead. And not just the most likely outcome, but all likely outcomes, being aware of all likely scenarios and having already decided how to handle those scenarios, except they can do it all instantly in their head, like being a master chess player of life. The speed and bandwidth at which they operate. Think of the movie Limitless. It's a bit like that. Maria Hill, when did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics? Tony Stark, last night. It's not that you can never be as good at something as a really smart person. For 99% of things you can learn, the upper limit of brain power required is not prohibitive given enough time and a good teacher. But a really smart person will be so much faster. There are people who can learn a new language in 2 weeks, well enough to use it conversationally and read it well enough to follow news articles, or power through an entire 3-4 year degree course in a year, get top grades, and still have a social life. The kind of people for whom reading a textbook, memorizing and understanding the content takes a couple of evenings, compared to the month it'd take the average student. And it's not just learning either. They think faster, solve problems faster, produce output faster, and make less mistakes. They're that person in your class who always got top marks in everything, even though, as far as you can tell, they pulled it put of their ass in about an hour. To them, the answers were obvious. They did all the reading for the year in the first week, and can recall most of the key points instantly, and probably where they read them. They type 100 words a minute, so a 3,000-word essay is an hour's work including bibliography. If you work hard in a field for 10 years, you can become an expert in it. But there is a certain group of people who could get to your level of knowledge in a year or two, barring anything that can only be learned by experience at the same speed as everyone else. You probably won't be able to recognize these people by chatting to them for 5 minutes. Some you will, because your brain will hurt just trying to keep up with them. But like ultra-wealthy people, ultra-smart people are all different. Some are very unassuming, with others it's more blatant, but with all of them you will slowly realize that you're dealing with a different class of human. I used to be oblivious to this until I went to therapy, but thinking lowly of yourself, constantly understating your skills and overall severe self-loathing, self-doubt. Basically that's how I've treated myself for my entire life until my therapist helped me out of that dark hole. It's still not easy to recognize my strengths and compliments. Praise from people still makes me feel uncomfortable and awkward. Anyways, I've noticed this type of behavior from other people that I view as very intelligent. It seems to be the most common trait amongst these kinds of people. Now I don't compare myself to those people because in no way do I see myself as an intellectual. But based on things people have said to me, both strangers and people close to me, it seems that I'm probably above average, and from what I've learned about myself in therapy, most of that intelligence is geared towards problem solving and completing tasks hyper-efficiently, which, thinking about it, that makes sense and explains certain things like my lifelong interest in engineering and science. They hide it so damn well, you'd almost never know. Was very much the case with one genius I knew. Very much flew under the radar. If one weren't paying careful attention, pretty easy to miss. Some just do not want the attention, so they very much try to blend in. And, being damn smart, they're often highly accomplished at not being noticed. I'm pretty smart, but I'm no genius. And, wow, being around true genius, yeah, blows my socks off. Alas, exceedingly rare to get to be around that. or more precisely to get to be around it and know it's there and well see it, etc. No, we're not talking Mensa level, top 2%, that's mere child's play. Besides, if Mensa is genius, that would imply about 160 million geniuses on the planet. Nope, that's pretty smart. But far from genius. Genius is more like the top less than 0.01%. That's like 4x Mensa squared level of smart. Edit/p.s. Once in a while someone will call me genius. And when I hear that, about all I can think is they've got no friggin' clue how smart actual genius level intelligence is. And I sure as heck ain't no genius. Smart, sure, genius. Oh hell no, nowhere close. When they don't know enough about a certain subject, they prefer to say so and not formulate a hard stance, or they're willing to accept that they were wrong and change their opinion because new information was made available to them. For example, were the measures against COVID over the top, and did the harm they did to the economy outdo the damage we prevented? My personal opinion is that no, the measures were not over the top, and that yes, they were needed. But I like to think that all the experts and actual virologists know more about it than I do, so I prefer to let them speak about this. They tend to be quiet and they are not afraid to have a bad idea. Being intelligent doesn't mean you are never wrong, but it does mean you are more willing to admit that you are wrong. Also, intelligent people will take a mistake they made less seriously than someone who isn't intelligent. That is not to say they won't recognize that their actions had consequences and apologize for it, but they don't tend to hang on to things, guilt or grief, as long as someone who isn't as intelligent. I'm not a big fan of IQ, or intelligence being something immutable. I think a good attitude towards learning and knowing how to contain your ego are important factors. Being patient enough to pay attention and know what details to focus on, as well as being able to perceive gaps in their knowledge. Perhaps people really do have different processing speeds and memory capacity, but I think everyone can learn habits that promote learning and further intellectual thought. Nuance, openness, able to be analytical and objective, often very simple yet effective ideas, like Elon Musk wanting to undesign things. They tend to have an innocent, almost childish approach to knowledge. It's nice to watch mathematicians get all emotional as they speak of the beauty of mathematics and such. They know a lot, and usually dominate general knowledge quizzes unless they have narrow interests elsewhere that they invest all their time in. They may be eccentric. There's multiple types of them, like the smarter and lazy type and the student and teacher's pet type. Some have good social skills and make great all-arounders. Others distance themselves from the world with good reason. They're either held to lofty standards or misunderstood and attacked. Some know when to lie and when to say the truth, to not say too much, to pick their battles, to manage others' expectations of them, that being silly is often better than not, to spare others shame, etc. And these people are so mild and modest that you'll probably consider them to be entirely uninteresting. They're like monks or the Amish. As another comment suggests, our ability to gauge each other's intelligence is just our ability to bullshit each other. Remember how the entire difference between apes and humans is 2% of DNA. The intelligence scale is not linear, it's exponential. So just 1 point higher IQ translates to a much greater difference in intelligence than the 1 point conveys. It comes down to this: if you think you're smarter than someone, you probably are. If you're not sure you're smarter than someone, you're not. Might sound like I'm tooting my trumpet, but I'm a fair bit more intelligent than most people seem. I'm schizophrenic, and apparently mildly autistic, and I've never been stable enough to make anything of myself. Just explaining. I generally hide it, try to blend in. It's not difficult, because I was dragged up in various pubs, moving around with my dad as he managed this, that, or the other sticky floored venue. However, when I get pissed I get louder, proportional to the alcohol I pour down my gullet. When I'm hammered, shouting at a mate about how to theoretically achieve superluminal velocities, and saying how humans are, generally speaking, no smarter than cattle. It really pisses people off. Unfortunately, they can't usually understand my explanation. I did not pick up on the sarcasm. Sorry, your original comment seemed like it was a one-sided conversation, which the other person wasn't really interested in or understanding, like talking at someone versus talking with someone. You then sort of lump these friends into the dumbass cattle group, as they can't understand your explanation. Maybe there is a way to explain so that it is more easily understood. I know I am out of my depth in a subject when I cannot explain it succinctly.